A blind credit, in simplest terms, is issuing a credit when you can't find the initial transaction. There are two parts to a credit card transaction. You authorize a transaction and then you settle a transaction. So when somebody pays with a credit card's authorized by the business owner and then settled. And that process usually happens in a day. And people frequently refer to that as batching out at the end of the day, or a batch settlement, because you're settling all the transactions. If you authorize a card and you want to cancel the transaction before it settles, that's called voiding a transaction. If you wait until the transaction has settled, then you have to refund the transaction. So at any point in time, typically same day, you can void a transaction. After that day, because the transactions have settled, and you do have some flexibility on when you settle transactions, but for the vast majority of the businesses out there, they're settling at the end of every day automatically. If you wait until afterwards, you have to do a refund. Refund is synonymous with credit. So a blind credit is where the transaction's gone through and settled, and then you try to refund it later, but you can't find the original transaction. There are two big scenarios where this happens. The first would be that you want to just give an angry customer their money back for something, but you can't find the original transaction because they don't have the same credit card or they don't have their receipt, and you just want to appease them and give them a credit. That would be one scenario. The other scenario is fairly common inside of e-commerce, which is you run a transaction on one merchant account and that merchant account gets closed for some reason. And then you want to issue a refund through another merchant account, but because you're trying to do it through another merchant account, you can't access the original transaction. So you cannot do the refund that way unless you do what's called a blind credit. Now, the challenge with blind credits is that they open up the door for tremendous fraud. And the reason that is the case is because if somebody has access to run refunds or credits through either your credit card terminal or your online gateway, they have the ability to refund whatever amount of money onto a card at their discretion if blind credits are turned on. So the reason that refunds have to be pinned to an original transaction is because it prevents somebody that has access to the credit card terminal or the gateway from arbitrarily just loading up money onto a credit card, saying, hey, run a refund for $5,000 onto this credit card. If you turn blind credits on, you have the ability to do that and just say, run a refund for $5,000, even though there's no original transaction. It opens the window for fraud, and it's such a big deal in the credit card processing ecosystem that by default, almost every provider will not have blind credits turned on. So if you want to refund money in those scenarios, you need to work with your provider to turn on blind credits for a limited amount of time. Inside the world of EasyPay Direct, I am actually, as the owner, the only person that has access to turn blind credits on. And when we do that, we do it for a short window and then we turn them off again, because there's not a use case where somebody would want to be able to do that in perpetuity, and it's not worth the risk of leaving it open for fraud. And that could be fraud from an internal employee. It could be, which would not be uncommon, in the case of a restaurant, if you had blind credits on, any server that has access to the machine, or in the case of a brick and mortar of any type, anybody that has access to the machine could run those blind credits if you left that turned on. Scary territory with blind credits. There is a use case where they make sense and where you might want to do it. But it's really case by case, and typically the multiple merchant account scenario is the most common inside the world of e-commerce.